Good evening, everyone. Welcome to SoulFood Books. Welcome to SoulFood Poetry Night. Very pleased to have you here. I'm Michael Dillon Welch, and together with Tanya McDonald, we are your fearful leaders. We are very pleased to have two featured readers tonight, and then we'll be having an open mic after the break, and you can get publications that our readers have brought with them during the break. To start us off, would you like to have a joke? A poem by E. Cummings, a poem by Stevie Smith, or a poem by A.R. Ammons? Okay, Cummings it is. And it's a good summer poem. Gee, I thought you were going to want the joke. Okay, all right. Cummings it is. This is one of my favorite Cummings poems, and it's sort of a children's poem. And I used to have a copy of it in the glove compartment of my car, and I used to love reading it to people. When I lived in California, I would go to the beach with all the hot dates I used to have. Maggie and Millie and Molly and May went down to the beach to play one day, and Maggie discovered a shell that sang so sweetly she couldn't remember her troubles. And Millie befriended a stranded star, whose rays 5 languid fingers were. And Molly was chased by a horrible thing, which raced sideways while blowing bubbles. And May came home with a smooth, round stone, as small as a world and as large as alone. For whatever we lose, like a you or a me, it's always ourselves we find in the sea. Mr. Edward Eslin Cummings. And in honor of our two featured readers tonight, they are both editors for the Los Angeles Review, and they have copies you can look at here and purchase. This is a poem for editors. It's called, depending on how you read the title, either Enveloped or Enveloped. I used to do the editing thing too. I write another rejection and seal another envelope, cells of my cut tongue drying inside. I wonder if some poet might try to poison me with the envelopes I lick, that requisite self-addressed stamped. Some envelopes taste sour, but some taste sweet. I wonder what taste the poison will have. These days, I guess you could get a virus from email submissions instead of being poisoned. I don't know. All right, our two readers tonight are Kelly Davio and Tanya Chernov, and I'll introduce them both, and then Kelly will read, and then say a few words about Tanya, and then she'll read, and then we'll have our break after that. So here's the official bio. Kelly Davio serves as managing and poetry editor for the Los Angeles Review. Wave a copy. Yes. And there's a recent issue available, as well as some back issues. And she also reads poetry for Fifth Wednesday Journal. She is the author of Burn This House, forthcoming from Red Hen Press, which I think is really cool. Her work appears in Gargoyle. Is it Pank? Yeah, I wondered if that was a prank or something. The Cincinnati Review, Women's Review of Books, Best New Poets 2009, which is really cool, and others. She holds an MFA in poetry from Northwest Institute of Literary Arts and teaches English as a second language in Bellevue. So I think that's cool. We're very glad to have you here. Also reading is Tanya Chernov, and she serves as both poetry editor and translation editor for the Los Angeles Review, an offshoot of Red Hen Press. She has also served as the guest poetry editor for Columbia Kids magazine, funded by the Washington State Historical Society. And I think that's really a neat gig. Her debut book, a memoir entitled A Real Emotional Girl, will be published by Skyhorse Publishing when? September 1st. So pretty sometime this year. So that's also really cool too. I also want to mention that we have our attendance has been a little low in recent years, and it's a little more this time. So I'm glad to see you're all here. I'm curious to know who's here for the first time. Okay, please don't make it your last. Please come back. And to start us off tonight, please welcome Kelly Davio.
Hi, thanks everybody for coming out, and thank you so much, Michael and Tanya, for having myself and Tanya here this evening. It's a real treat to be able to be here. So as Michael mentioned, I am one of the editors of the Los Angeles Review, and I'm a Californian by birth and a little bit by heart. But the Northwest has grown on me a lot, and I'm going to start off by reading what I think of as one of my Northwest poems. This is called Chanter and Drone. My neighbor plays bagpipes expansively. His melodies shambolic, exploratory, no two notes in harmony, no phrase repeated. He feels there is no room for regret, that every note must be addressed as an agent of possibility. Because a daily practice, if worthwhile at all, must be punctual, at sunset, on afternoons, on sunless days, he offers up an algorithm of tones, his feet set wide for balance on the alp of his houseboat roof. He wears traditional dress, a white t-shirt and jeans split at the seat. The western wind catches, sets frayed threads of notes over the water. With the drone's tortured onset, Portage Bay rowers turn in carbon fiber racers, tugged by current, their ears cupped for the source of the sound. Dogs snivel, paw at garden dirt. Gulls fluster and groan. Garden cabbages shudder, their fat leaves trembling in the vibrating air. Humming to myself won't cover this tuneless ritual. My neighbor's felt lung can't be punctured by radio static. The kitchen fan only dulls the ear. It's cunning, this sound, pulling its thread through such a snug weave. It's a puzzle that one of us neighbors has not yet pulled the useless plugs from our ears, called the police, complained of ruined digestion and disturbance of the peace. That not one of us shakes a fist from an open window or throws a too soft tomato from the garden when there's a clear shot. That even on those hot nights when we linger barefoot on porches, despite dishes in the sink, we go silent, listening hard for music. Only in Seattle. True story. I'm going to read some other pieces that are from my forthcoming book. I think it's Billy Collins who says that forthcoming is the greatest title in the English language, and I agree. This one is entitled The Way I Remember. The way I remember, it was my older sister who walked barefoot on a balance beam of a creosote-soaked railroad tie abandoned in a field and speared the soft flesh between her toes. Tar stuck at her heels. Never looking down, she kicked a rogue splinter pulled clear of the sleeper tie and buried a fragment of oak in her skin. She hid the wound from our mother with a loose shoe, knowing prohibitions come with bodily records of wrongdoing. At night, she dug at her angry skin with a crochet hook, oak breaking to smaller flinders. I held a flashlight toward her foot, my eyes shielded with a flannel sleeve, my voice reciting times tables to cover her hoarse breath. Decades later, I find a scar on my own right foot, between the second and third toes. The raised tissue, like a rubber band, broken, snapped to a curl beneath my skin. The position is an exact fit for a kick at a rail tie, the rough mend suggesting a want of stitches, suggesting coal grown into the sinews after years of my forgetting. Looking hard, I see the ragged edges have striated, sprouted spindle leaves like vagrant foxtails growing in fields, fields where I remember only watching in fear, never walking a balance. I don't talk to my sister often, but I seem to write a lot of poems about her. Here is another one. This one is entitled Sympathy, and it has an epigraph from Genesis 30, verse 8, with great wrestlings have I wrestled with my sister. Rachel and Leah on a blue flannel graph. paper limbs clinging to fiber and shadow. The edges of their arms overlapped, hand holding hand. Sisters, their photocopied faces told us so. We two sat on the church room floor, handling our cotton ball sheep, all paste and stringy wool, my lamb's eyes drooping. Your fingers crept out to grab at my sheep, and I slapped your hand away. The Sunday school teacher plucked Rachel from the board and tucked her behind Jacob's tent. The ball of her foot peeked beneath canvas, suggesting the turn of a dance. Jacob loved Rachel, but he hated Leah. We thought we knew the meaning then of the pair of sisters. One would be loved. The other would stand outside the tent, her paper arm extended, hand empty. We eyed one another. Each of us was certain that we would be the heroine of our own myth, each the one to dance in the tent. The way your face went hard told me that you would leave me standing in the dust, but what we didn't know is that Leah, from the Akkadian, meaning cow, meaning the one with the swollen eyes, her body used to plow the fields, arms dragging a furrow through soil and rock to feed the sons born to her sister. Rachel, from the Hebrew, meaning you, meaning the one used for sacrifice, the one filleted, chopped, stewed for a meal, the one stripped naked to clothe the sons that weren't her own. Neither the victor, neither one loved, both chattel to a wandering shepherd, wrestling over crusts of bread. We didn't know that a tent's flat folds the way the body bends to breaking. I seem to write a lot of religious poems as well. Here's another. This one is called Senescence, and it has an epigraph from the Quran, Surah 5, verse 27 to 31. Recite to them the truth of the story of the two sons of Adam. Allah sent a raven who scratched the ground to show him how to hide the shame of his brother. Painters show them young. A bare-chested, hairy first son with a club of knotwood and a younger waif with no beard, a swath of lamb's wool around meatless ribs. The hulk leads the small one to the field, palm working grip in the fresh splinter of wood. But what if Cain were no young man, aged as long as first fathers are said to have lived, fresh at a century, tiring only after a second, and this was no lone flush of rage? Might hundreds of dry summers spent crouched at the soil have bent his back into a snug socket of ache? Could years have carved out the rock in him, have worn small rivers with that fine vintage of hate? The surahs tell us, to Abel went the prettier wife, to Abel the task of tending sheep, the only acceptable work of the hands. That Abel's slaughtered lamb pleased the God who sent Cain to fields to coax tubers from dust, who gave Cain the hunched gnat of a mate, that on the withered ends of Cain's toil, this same God cast his downturned eye, then pointed Cain's attention to the ravens, clawing gouges in the earth, opening soil to worms that waited centuries for flesh in the land which cares nothing for us. I also like to write about some other characters who pop up in my life, and teaching English as a second language to high school students gives me lots of interesting characters in my life. This is a poem I wrote after a particularly interesting encounter with one of my students from Korea. It's called Maybe I Am Gold. My student visits this moldering classroom twice a week, learns mysteries of English prepositions, the toothy differences between six and sick. Today, he works the tongue, the lip, and the throat to practice the guttural exhibit. Amused with the word, he demonstrates. Pushing arms from sides and lifting his chin to earlobe level, he says, "Maybe I am gold, I can exhibit my body." Giggling, he stands, limbs perpendicular, imagining himself as a museum display. I suggest to him he's misthought, but the corner of my lip twists. Never to laugh like that before a crowded room, tattoos greening in overhead light and skin webbed with purple vein. What right do I have? I drink from my chipped teacup and say to him, maybe. Another character in my life is my father-in-law, a very dear man to me, but one who lends himself well to some poems written at his expense. And as he's not with us in the room this evening, I feel free to read this one. It's called Humility. It is our annual pilgrimage when he visits to trek with my father-in-law to the posh cafe with hour-long queues for three-person tables where cooks in white linen scramble duck eggs with smoked salmon. In that cafe, my father-in-law wears his polo shirt, printed with the Constitution, or with the better parts. From shoulder to navel, a more perfect union slopes down his belly. No mention of temperance, balances, or checks, but the signature of one Rufus King, that lesser-known father, edges from his armpit. He settles back in a painted green chair, its wooden rails striating the Third Amendment. When he leans this way, the spine settled in an inch of space between the bars, his feet clamped wide in a brace, we know he is about to speak over loud, proclaiming learnings and philosophies so broad the table shudders under our fingers as though we conducted a seance. We grip the tablecloth to give it anchor. At his mention of foreign policy, the table's ornamental dahlias shudder. With wars and rumors of wars, coffee cups rattle and chip in their saucers, and when the deficit has its turn for an airing, a service dog in a green training vest begins to whine and roll its eyes. And when I sneak a truce chorizo its direction, an elderly woman at the table behind spears me with a look. I excuse myself, rummage my flatware at the busing cart as if I worked here, because from this hallway I can feign he's no relation of mine. He's just a man in a shirt shouting. And I'll close with my soul food poem, in keeping with the theme of the soul food poetry reading. I had to kind of meditate a little bit on my work and what I would really consider my soul food poem. I decided to pick one that grew out of a childhood interest of mine, which was attempting to be able to communicate with radio waves that were around me in the air. As a small child, I thought that if I could just focus enough, I would be able to receive all types of radio communication that is around us at all these times. It would be nice to be able to maintain that kind of childhood exuberance, and so I've decided that this poem is, in fact, my soul food poem. It's entitled Electromagnetic Compatibility. I am the conduit of all transmission. The baseboards of noise radiate from my skull. I hear the faint buzz when I bend a knee all the way to 108 megahertz. My right hand taps the cool rhythm of amplitude modulations. Between the joints of my smallest toe, a call-in talk show pushes along my connective tissues. Top 40 hits in mono and stereo bisect my stomach, love handles jiggling at 52 stories from local news breaks, 3 weather reports, and a sponsorship message from Lucky Charms. Their delicious magic pulses circumnavigates my navel. A teleconference connected through my vein satellite rattles the back of my neck. I shimmy shoulders, show my displeasure when I tire of a rasp in a haggler's voice, cast a web of white noise through my spine. When I'm through with public broadcast pledge drives, I listen for the red giant's white signal, static issued from billions of years of brilliance from the center of the molecular bang, all of it vibrating, all of it humming in my bones. Thank you. And now I have the enormous pleasure of turning the microphone over to Tanya Chernov. I asked Tanya to read with me this evening because she's a writer whom I have an enormous amount of respect for as a poet, as a memoirist, as a fiction writer. She's one of the few people I know who writes all three incredibly well. And for that, we all have reason to be jealous of her. Tanya's a fantastic poet, and in addition, I would encourage you all to check out her memoir that's, again, going to be published on September 1st, A Real Emotional Girl, You Will Cry Like a Baby. Tanya.
Thank you. I'm sure It's really a pleasure to be here. Thank you all so much for coming, and thank you to Kelly. Kelly is my literary life partner and so much more, and I'm just delighted to be here following a really incredible act. So I do have this memoir coming out September 1st, and I'm going to start by reading a few poems that, in some form or another, actually made their way into the memoir. I grew up in Wisconsin, and that landscape has forever imprinted on my poetry, and this one takes place in a town called Minong, Wisconsin, population 521, where I spent half my life. This is Minong, Wisconsin. Trapped in the gut of a hard Wisconsin winter, the hardest of my life, I stayed home alone with the ghosts. I set to work. I cleaned. I organized. I sewed. I wood burned. I hammered brass finishings into cedar tongue and groove each day until I felt sedate. Then the freeze came. The tires of my truck squared off. A Nalgene water bottle froze and cracked. The older two dogs peed in the house. Alone for 500 acres, big girl in a little town, I set to work in the cold. I washed my hands in freezing water, my favorite Arctic trick. I went outside, around the house to get more wood, with only a sweater on, proof of something even I couldn't name. At night, I'd set my alarm every 2 hours, wake to the orange glow of the wood-burning stove filtering into my room, dogs piled together on the bed with me. Lowering logs into their places, squatting boyishly in long underwear, my face illuminated and hot. I thought the house had never been fitted for winter, never meant to hold a family year-round. It held me then, real well, tied me tight against the frost. Later that very hard winter, my father passed away. I was 20 years old, and it would be about another year before I was able to return to the place where we had spread his ashes. This is called Drying Up. The beaver pond where my father's ashes feed the muck is drying. The small plaque with his name on a sunken wedge of sidewalk cement tilts now on its side without water to keep it buoyed. The pond stinks. Its silty layers along the bottom, exposed now to the wind, reach my mouth and nose. I have to portage my solo canoe over the dam to get to him. Under my feet, patches of mud have dried between the threads of woven twigs blanketing the dam, holding it together. Before we drizzled his ashes here, I fantasized about a casket, a cemetery plot, someplace traditional, someplace I could go. But it's better here in the beaver pond than a graveyard next to 94 West. I don't remember much of the day we paddled out here last October, remember neither the colors of the sunset nor the peak leaves twisting in the trees. I do remember the chilled aluminum of one of the old canoes big enough to fit 4, the cool of it against my chin as I watched my father spiral down into the indigo, mixing with muck, weeds, the sand beneath. We cried into the pond, our tears chasing the sandy ash. Don't go, don't go. Would the salt from our eyes fall heavy in fresh water? With the water line so low now, the gunwale of my fiberglass canoe is just as warm as my cheek. It will be swamp here before I have children. The lake has stopped feeding the pond. When I first lulled here, alone with my father, could I have guessed all my crying would turn this place to salt flat? This is my last Wisconsin piece for the night. This is Unplayed Piano. I wake cold. The lake behind me is iced with clouded cellophane, shining and even. It calls my body in the overcast morning, long after dawn, and it is still dark. Clumps of pine needles gather in patchwork shapes on the forest floor outside my window. They invite me to lie down on their prickling mattress, and I am like a cheek waiting to be touched. While the early fog softens, then disappears, I cook my single serving of oats. The velvety fur on the uncooked flakes pushes back and forth under the heaviness of my fingertips. At midday, the sun's arms penetrate the clouds' congregation to reach my skin. I am warmed, as keys on the piano must be, when light filters in through a nearby window. Dust-dimmed light strokes the lacquer, heating first black, then slowly the white. Yet I listen for the quiet. No music will come from either of us, with only the sunlight for touch. This next piece is a little bit of one of my fan favorites. This is also in the book in some form. This is called Hookers in the Woods. It's a true story. The Czech Republic exhibits Gothic mountain ranges, cobbled village squares, sensuous sunrises, and also hookers in the woods. Driving through the chaste countryside, don't be surprised to find the golden-tipped wheat fields and rock faces, punctuated by ladies in hot pants and mesh tops, dancing roadside to Neil Diamond. They must be cold out there, you say. And where in the Carpathian forest does this business transaction take place? The constant shaking of fish-netted asses and leather-gloved hands waving at passersby seems to ward off any cold the winter offers. Along the Tatran Highway, you will find simple wooden shacks where boom-boom rooms offer space for the exchange. There are no shades in the windows of these efficiencies, only red lace curtains and strings of hosiery to obstruct the view from the road. Business on the Czechoslovakian highway appears to be thriving. The forest prostitutes seem genuinely happy. Though they sing along with Mr. Diamond's lyrics, everywhere around the world they're coming to America, the hookers in the woods are content with their location. This next poem was actually my very first ever to get published, so it holds a very special place in my heart. This is someone else's Wet Styrofoam. I practiced flirting on an Italian train leaving Switzerland with a European boy camped out across from me. I liked him when he sat down, liked his messy hair, his loose sweater, his weathered pants that hung on him the way pants ought to hang on a boy. I pretended not to notice him, tried to look my prettiest staring out the window. He tried too, not to give himself away, but we each caught the other staring more than once. Little smile wet my lips. I watched like a child while he rolled cigarettes, smoked them between sips of coffee, and glanced out the window, then back to me. I wanted him to speak English. I wanted him to ask my name. When he fell asleep against his backpack, I imagined myself moving like a thief across the tops of the seats to kiss his eyelids without a word of hello. But it wasn't for me to wake him up, and the men who did were far less sweet than I fantasized I would be. 9 sweating Italian police hurried toward us, looking more like commandos covered in green, with weapons too large for such a confining space. Swinging their rifles round to their backs, they flipped through my passport, and they examined my body with their eyes. The dogs watching me at their knees were not the dogs I knew from home. Turning to my boy still sleeping, they slapped his forehead a few times and unpacked all his things. His embarrassment was racking for us both. The Polizia Ferroviaria, yelling and laughing and slapping my boy on the head, didn't mind my watching. I knew they were talking about it. When they pulled him out of his seat and threw his things on the floor, he looked at me again and asked for a cigaretta. I knew enough Italian to understand cigarettes, but couldn't lift my arm to give him one. I watched behind the window as he was taken away. When he was gone, I took a sip from his cold cup of coffee and smoked that cigarette myself. That is a true story. This next one is not. This next poem appeared first in Gargoyle, and it's a little bit darker. It's called Salt Lick. I planted snapdragons and hot peppers, herbs and sweet peas, then peony bulbs nearest my kitchen windows. I walked the rows of packed dirt, eager for the company of young, dewy buds. Soon I noticed wet green fingers reaching toward me from the ground, checked them every morning. The peppers now just visible on their stems, the snapdragons showing color. The peony bush wouldn't surface, though I fertilized, watered, waited for months. The rest of my seeds germinated and grew, lengthened my grain with every centimeter. The peony did nothing. In July it sprouted. Something dangled heavily from the thin stem, something round, pink, and shiny. Kneeling in the grass, I saw it was translucent, alive, but not a worm, not a snail, not a mouse or a mole. Soon, the peony's petals loosened and pushed out plump, vague shapes. A slime swelled around it like moss on a stone. Neither baby plant nor baby vegetable. It was a baby human growing in my yard. My hands on my face and my whole body shaking, I stepped close to the waxy thing. I laid a blanket beside it, set my dinner in the flower bed. I could guard this baby and watch it grow, careful not to wake it too soon. Time passed strangely. My skin felt dry. The house took on the unkempt appearance belonging to abandoned homes. 10 days later, the baby suddenly let go. Its stem fell like a downy winter feather to the soil. With bulbous blind eyes and dirt-covered fingers, he wailed and wiggled while I held him all warm in my arms. At morning, my skin felt wet from the blanket beneath me. The baby, tiny and dead, still sucked at my breast. The stem was gone, replaced by a rotted umbilical cord. The thing in my arms was half decayed and greasy with death. I flung it off me, and it landed among the peonies, now growing strong and mad. I backed away from the garden and stared at the baby from far away. Spitting a whispered wail, I saw it wasn't a baby anymore, but a giant, squirming slug stirring toward me. I grabbed a bowl of salt and quickly poured it over the moist body of the slug, and I watched while it shrank into itself, all folds and wrinkles. Under the cruel morning sunshine, my baby dissolved into just a dark little shadow in the dirt. In its place, another peony bud poked through the black soil and shined under the late summer sun. I pulled out and dusted an old rocking chair, the bowl of salt still resting in my hands. To close tonight, I have 2 Seattle poems, which are also very close to my heart. This is from Under the Magnolia Tree. The smell of the desert finds me here, under a magnolia tree 2,000 miles from that parched landscape of my youth. The rain slaps down around the borders of my patio and saturates the grass, the tree wells, the asphalt in the streets, satiating the leftover scorch and bake of the city streets, still pulsing hours after sundown, the 4th 100-degree day in a row. The whole neighborhood sighs during the rain, the people, houses, cars, and dogs, remembering how good a storm feels, how the quenched air fills with a sudden coolness. And all around me I smell, or imagine I smell, the creosote scent of the desert after a furious monsoon rain. Leaning back in my ancient, creaking plastic chair, I close my eyes, take in another sip of the blacktop air, and remember the wind in my desert yard, the way it licked my cheeks and lifted my hair. I imagine myself as a mound of sand, a collection of tiny pebbles, slowly growing bigger with each gust along the bottom of an empty riverbed, building and building upon myself, each grain lengthening the silhouette of my shadow beside me. And this last one, this is my soul food poem, and I had a pretty good sense right away of which one was going to be my soul food poem. This is one of my favorites. This is called Overflow on the Other Side. It has an epigraph by Ezra Klein. Whoever's job it is to come up with the collective nouns for birds must have a hilariously good time. A parliament of owls, a nigh of pheasants, an unkindness of ravens, a murder of crows. Meanwhile, a collection of starlings is called a murmuration. Those birds must have been swallows, or starlings perhaps, those that filled the straight-edged gaps in downtown sky with their undulating, connect-the-dot blackness. All the street strangers and I let our umbrellas dangle, get bumped by winds at our thighs. We jerked our chins to the skyline so we could watch this hybrid clan, this school of fish, swarm of shivering gnats, signal the apocalypse in the air above the streetlights and stunted sidewalk trees. I've never seen birds move and shake that way together, slamming bodies against each other, reaching to fly nearest a skyscraper window, then crashing back the opposite way. One end of the mass pulled back and under, like the ocean as she calls back a wave. The overflow on the other side spilled all across to spread, this pattern repeating strobe quick. But the apocalypse didn't come, and soon this cloud of bird dissolved away, as if all liquid in their bodies evaporated, all sinew dried to ash, pushed apart by winds. The birds abandoned their colony, and on the street we bird watchers were made strangers again. Umbrellas were righted and perched. The rain was just rain. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I wonder if I could ask a favor of each of you, if you might pick a short poem from the Los Angeles Review and each read one of those by another poet. And while you're thinking about that, I'll read you one of those other poems that you didn't vote for. This is Poetics by A.R. Ammons. I look for the way things will turn out spiraling from a center, the shape things will take to come forth in, so that the birch tree, white, touched black at branches, will stand out, wind glittering, totally its apparent self. I look for the forms things want to come as, from what black wells of possibility, how a thing will unfold. Not the shape on paper, though that too, but the uninterfering means on paper. Not so much looking for the shape as being available to any shape that may be summoning itself through me, from the self, not mine, but ours. A.R. Ammons. Ready?
Here is a poem I wish that I could write, but Richard Prinz, who's a young student in Brooklyn, I believe, wrote this one. I wish I could have done it myself. It's called Some God. Some God that sent the zigzag lightning to join the muttering thunder. Some God whose fingers smolder with the jazz. Some God who taught two porcupines to make love, coiled up and grunty. Some God leaping in the eyeballs of that madman on the train. Some God that's dancing the June bug to a woebegone didgeridoo. Some God that swings from the highest trees in her most private jungles. Some God's got himself a frail white beard and nose half full of boogers. Some God plays tag with you, can't be touched lest he touch you first. Some God that's got to walk the neighborhood telling all about his touching problem. Some God smites a walrus cub for sitting on a lobster. Some God gives a dozen lashes to heaven's most uppity bastard. Some God is making the stars all twinkle like a spat on toilet bowl. Some God spanking Cupid's robed flank saying, get your ass to work. Some God led rhinos out of the wilderness into a zoo, amen. Some God painting two cans of beak, Chaplin his mustache, bladed grass green. Some God that hid your mind inside a song and helped you find it, then snuck it in a tome, gave you the map, finally decided to be a real sadistic bastard and drop it off at a Pentecostal church. Some God who invented fire escapes, collecting royalties and souls so the devil don't foreclose on his mortgage. He's gonna holler at his son, how you think it's done, damning sinners with a snap of your fingers, then getting prayed to at all those dinners? Then Jesus spits back in his face, how do you think it tastes, sipping wine the last time you dined, knowing it's your own blood in the vine? Some God that lassos bluesy cowboys with a wrinkly, unshed snake. Some God who straps a bird's nest to his groin for modesty, then flings those crackly eggs at haughty stoops. Some God's never gonna hire you because you don't wear a noose. Some God who tripped on acid once so the heads would dig him in the 60s. Some God who gets a sex change whenever he deems proper. Some God who wins at milkshake races slurping from his anteater's snout. Some God went and appointed the platypus chief of staff of new ideas. Some God won't stop lording it until his son quits playing dead like a possum. He ran over that time. He got off the wagon. He can't quite remember what happened to that possum, squashed fetuses staining the roadside. He wept through like a colicky baby, for he so haplessly loved the world.
So Kelly and I picked two very different poems, which I'm glad for because the Los Angeles Review does love a whole mess of things. This is by Paul Scott August. This is called Obad Pleasant Street. I'm reading it because this is one thing that I really love about the poetry world, that there is an entire form dedicated to the Walk of Shame. Obad Pleasant Street. Awakened by the changing light, I press my face into your neck. Breathe deeply of last night, and get up from your oversized couch. It's too early, and I need to leave for work. My clothes in a pile with one shoe. Fresh light leads me down the hallway to the shower. Outside your bathroom window, the sun rises over Lake Michigan, and a single bird does what I cannot. When I come back out, the smell of coffee stops me, but the bang of a dumpster lid in the alley below jars me back to you. wrapped up in a blanket with 2 cups on the end table, a cigarette lit, and your eyes asking me what you won't. But I dress, get down on one knee, and look under the couch for my one missing shoe, then put it on. The awning below your open window snaps in the wind, and the other steps echo down the hall until they end with the closing of the front door. You lean into me, but all I can think about is how the sunrise in my rearview mirror will blind me as I drive away.
Thank you for that impromptu extra. Appreciate that. We can take a break of 10 or 15 minutes. Please get something to eat or drink, or eat and drink, and they'll help you out over there. And check out Los Angeles Review, and then we'll have our open mic. Where's the sign-up sheet? Over on that table there. If you'd like to sign up, please do. Depending on how many people sign up, we may have a little bit longer time than usual tonight for each person. Let's give one more round of thanks to our 2 featured readers, Kelly Davio and Tanya Chernov. Thank you very much.
ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. This is Captain speaking.
What? Oh, okay. I think we're ready to get going again. We can socialize more afterwards as well. Before we get going, I do want to mention that we some other poetry activities coming up soon. Those of you who are familiar with the Redmond Association of Spoken Word, which meets over at the Old Redmond Schoolhouse, we'll be having a reading on the last Friday of the month, which is a week from tomorrow. And the featured reader is Kim Kircher, and she is a professional ski patroller at Crystal Mountain, and her husband is part of the family that owns Crystal Mountain ski area. And she drops bombs out of helicopters to start avalanches. And she's going to be talking about her memoir about doing that and the challenge of her husband's cancer, which is an interesting angle on the whole story. So I'm really looking forward to that, and I get to be the MC over there too, at least this month. Our reading here at SoulFood is the third Thursday of the month, as usual. And we have two poets coming from Oregon next month, so please come back for that. I don't know why, but I'm completely blanking out on their names. Maybe it's because I just had my 50th birthday recently. And AARP wants me to join. Do I stay younger if I don't? I don't know. Anyway, my wife says I'd have to dye my hair or something. So we have a number of readers signed up, about 7 people. So I'd say about 4 or 5 minutes, so a little longer than usual tonight if you want to read a little longer. Also, we'll be hearing what each person's favorite pizza topping is, which is our question of the month. And our first reader is Janine Hall Gailey, who likes roasted red peppers. Janine.
The name of the poem was Roasted Red Peppers? That is awesome. I want a poem like that. Well, I thought I was going to read something out of one of my books, but I thought in honor of Kelly, you guys who are reading tonight, Bradley Review, I thought I would read, let's see, I think this is a poem from the very first issue Kelly edited back in 2009. And can you guys hear me okay? I'm kind of short for the mic. Is that, yeah? Okay. It's called The Robot Scientist's Daughter Journeys West. She's a bit of an alien here, in the land of tan legs and blonde hair, beaches and bongo drums, but she waves with delight at the seals sunning themselves on the rocks. What a long journey, leaving skins and false limbs in her path, not in a covered wagon, but all the same she reins it in. Once over the mountains, she could see flower fields on all sides, the winding and happy light on bare shoulders. So what if the crispy trees were devoured every so often by fire, or the hills slid down in the rain, if the earth rattled a little along fault lines? In a land of cartoon mice, you learn not to question. Besides, she felt she had been born to Imagineer. The books are so clean here, hardly touched at all, and the air smells like funnel cake. Thank you guys for the wonderful reading tonight. That was so great. Another one here called Aberrant Code. I was telling Kelly I really liked her electromagnetic poem, so this is maybe a little bit in the same vein. So aberrant code can refer to either DNA code or computer code or all kinds of codes going wrong. So aberrant code. I promised you a poem. I didn't say it wouldn't be about me. In the end, I can only write myself into smaller circles. On the internet, you can pretend to be normal. I can be a rock star and love parasailing. Otherwise, it's me and my stack of books, my humming screens and the birds looking into my window. They want in, want a hint of my story, but I can't even give them that. So many aberrations in my code, I can't tell you. One story's about nuclear waste and the other a trick of genetics. Either way, the ground here is sown with monsters, some of them weeping, some of them eating the furniture. What to expect? A misguided love interest, a tragic disaster, one more lonely heart echoing into blue screen. If I were a guitar, I'd be screaming for you, my teeth sunk into you. 10 little bluebirds cry about the stains on their chests, or was that the stain of dawn? All those gods and flowers mixed up. We're good to go. One suitcase of misgiving, one of dislocation. We've traveled this path before, so don't expect a happy ending. You, my friend, got your hopes up. Keep to the root cellar. That's where the truth lives, in the fingers of trees, your fingers like tree roots. Say goodbye to me and my problems. Say hello to emblem and embrace. Speak to me softly with the teeth of serpents.
Ooh, I'm going to stand up here. There's a fan up here, folks. More people sign up on the list. Fan, very nice. Alrighty, up next we have Shyla. Shyla Silliman, whose favorite pizza topping is mushrooms. Excellent choice.
This is, yes, my first time. Thank you. All right, so my first poem is called Help Me See. Yes, I know I don't exist in your prideful, sweet bliss, but why do you act so arrogant when you know that I still love you and that I only want to strive for you, but I am still nothing. I am useless lines in a useless world. Feelings do not matter, for it will just be a brainwashing tool for a corporate system to use. Then why do I feel the way I do every single moment I see you? My inner hounds of my hell shriek as night to night I sit and weep, wondering when the stars will change my direction, or if it's my own correction. The universe is bright with red, while the tears are falling down like lead. I'm skipping stones with my shattered heart bits, while the radio waves tend to glitch. When will you see the lonely me through your old eyes and through my cries? Can we relieve our past, the one that flew by so fast? Please, please come back to me. Do I have time for another one or just one? All right, okay. This one's a little bit better. It's more happy. Oh, yeah, okay. Let me see where it's at. Okay, this I don't have a name for it yet, but it's really more positive, so yeah. Life has a way of working things out, even in your darkest times. When something is taken away, you gain knowledge from your experience. You love and lose, but something, somehow, in some way, is given back to you. To help you stride forward and become another stepping stone in life, to push you, to heal, and even comfort you. From time to time, you will feel pain from your loss, but it's the hand of pure gentleness and love that pulls you out of your heart-wrenching trance. That deep hole in your heart slightly mends when you do something you love or be with someone that cares. Love is a funny game that toys with your heart, your emotions, your mind. And life adds to that, but there is always someone or something that will enlighten you and help you carry on. Thank you.
Thank you, Shyla. Please come back. I'm going to inflict some Neon Buddha poems on you. The Neon Buddha dies again and again in the rose garden. The Neon Buddha sometimes confuses what's on his mind with what's on his head. To see what it's like, the Neon Buddha licks the Taj Mahal. Deciding to procrastinate later, Neon Buddha. Foreign trip. Neon Buddha practices saying, "No way, Jose." No one laughs at his droll jokes, Neon Buddha. No one laughs at his troll jokes either, Neon Buddha. Neon Buddha on the library steps, reading between the lions. Giving 110% at the mathematics convention, Neon Buddha. Bear market, the Neon Buddha takes a bath. Neon Buddha asks the comedy club stage manager, who's on first? Neon Buddha misreads the bar sign, please wait to be sated. Bowling night, the Neon Buddha strikes again. If you see the Neon Buddha in the road, kill him. I have 2,000 of those. I just thought I'd mention. I'll spare you the rest. Our next by the way, I like mushrooms too, so that's my favorite pizza topping. Our next, so that's 2 points for mushrooms and 1 point for red peppers, and we're now going to get 1 point for green peppers, and that's from David Simmons. Welcome, David.
Start my brief performance by elbowing someone in the head. That'll get people's attention. Violence, yes. Okay, so I brought my notebook today, and I picked out a few things to read, so I hope that they are not too strangely unedited. And there's a really strong wind trying to close my book, but I don't like that one. This is kind of a half piece, so I'm sorry. To write about Seattle and talk about its botany and its arrangements, its plants, and its gardens. And it would be difficult not to. You would have to mention certain things. Honeysuckle and pine, cottonwood and rose, rock walls, grass weed, ragweed, fire, ferns, water, and green hoses, earth of its various sorts, cherry flowers to cherry fruits, blackberry, which is the rose of fruits, and ivy, tulips from the Skagit Valley, all the evergreens, the weeping willows with their confessional shade, the interurban pathways between highways and between yards, the oaks, the maples, the fountains and alstroemeria, the riverbanks, the hands that tend all these things, and the basement sinks where they wash them, and the privateness of property and its openness, every bit of it, and its green, and why not, its green legumes, bringing caffeine from Africa into Central America, the painters and their places, the nooks and lakes, the nooks of lakes. You would have to talk about hillsides. You would have to mention books read in plain air as we breathe the flowers, the distilled dramaticism of open-air concentration, the residential streets of Madrona and Innis Arden, and Rainier Park and Mercer, Renton, and Lake Forest Park. It's a half piece. It's an ADD piece. So that's it. It was a day where everything was as plenteous as sunlight. And everyone who feels even the most distant heat feels that they own the sun. It was not the city. It was a hill 6 blocks above the city. It was perfect. There was a hospital there, so we were not alone. And that day, everyone knew and felt that there was salvation in the city after all, and that there was enough of it for everyone. It's one of my happy days I had to write. Can I just read one more short thing? Okay. This is kind of a series of questions. Pablo Neruda wrote a book of questions, and I don't write anything like Pablo Neruda, but I like the idea of writing questions. Who will take care of the strong part of a weak thing? Who will take care of the weak part of a strong thing? Who will take care of that which it is generally recommended to abandon? What will be the first thing to tremble when you die? What will flow in the winds that gather around your death? What will history say when your memories are no longer dancing in the streets? Okay, that's it.
Challenging furniture over in this neck of the woods. Be careful, folks. Up next, we have Eugene Billy, whose favorite pizza topping is jalapenos. This isn't your first time, is it? No, I didn't think so.
I have a sporadic attendance record. It's really like, it's not even a coin flip. It's like Schrodinger's cat. Like, will he be here and he won't be here? Anyway, so fun fact about today's question of the month, I am a pizza delivery boy. Woo! All right. Anyway, so I'm gonna start with one of the like unstructured, not rhyming ones, and then maybe we'll have some time at the end for some iambic pentameter. Anyway, the title here is Roman numeral 2, but I don't know about that. Anyway, temperance. Sometimes the bony old hand of fate decides to jam its cold fingers in your hopeful eyes and blind you just long enough to snatch some dreams away. And it's probably a good thing no one here is a hopeless optimist that completely relies on something that hasn't even happened yet. No, we're reasonable people. Until, of course, we blame fate herself, or time, her senile grandfather, or nature, his wife. And on we go, preaching, telling our friends to stay away from hopeless pipe dreams, trying to save them from their faults and hoping dearly, dearly they'll save us from ours, those that we fear to acknowledge for ourselves. Fear. Fear is what keeps us from dying. Fear is what keeps us from living. It is cold and remorseless. It's a guilty comfort. And once we use our boundless banks of reason to overcome it, we are praised. Courage. Think about the word courage. It is the fool's excuse to die. It is the hero's conviction to live. We praise it as a virtue for what it is. The power to stand up in the face of our enemies, our tormentors, our oppressors, that which we fear and that which we hate, and to assert that we have a right to be here. It is martyrdom for good. It is genocide for evil. Rage. Pure, refined, unadulterated, unbiased, unquestioned, welcoming, reassuring, comforting, exciting, exhilarating. Proof that we are nothing special. Beasts. We walk upright. We have thumbs. We can construct the complexities of language and tools. We have painted the earth forever with our ingenious temples and scars. But take one step over the line and we grow fangs. Seized by boiling blood and venom, we brutally obliterate anything in our path with no remorse, no guilt, only instinct. A grim, constant reminder of our ties to this place we all long to transcend so humbly, this place we all condemn for its wrongs, that we seek to vindicate with the same passion and fury that binds us here forever. Well, maybe not forever. Death. Sweet, cold, putrid, man's greatest enemy. So fearsome we don't even wish to acknowledge his inevitable impending presence. A great shadow looming over us, instilling dread in all we hold dear, or so we're told. But the truth is, it's as natural as the fire in our eyes and as beautiful as the love in our hearts. We fear it just like we fear the dark. It is unknown. We don't know what it is, so we try to glorify it, make it something staple, something comforting, something we could tuck away to the backs of our heads and not think about until we have no choice. That is the only reason it's so mortifying. because we placed it on a tattered, broken sable pedestal, surrounded it with pain and disease, and thrown some lightning bolts in the background. But, like a graceful butterfly or a delicate cherry blossom or a stunning sunset, it just is, as expected as the unexpected. Change. My friend once looked at the buildings sprouting from the earth in this town and told me he wished it wasn't so. A soldier joins ranks and files of faceless men preparing to shed blood and hatred over things he may not stand for. He may die. He wishes this wasn't so. A man loses his home. A woman gets arrested. A man wins the lottery. A woman gives birth to a healthy, beautiful child. They are forever changed. The judge of better or worse is in your own soul. You have the first, last, and only word. Change is just trying to live. But here I am again, preaching, raging, teaching, saving, venting my thoughts, reading my love, a prophet, a messenger, a specter, a herald of what? Words, words, words. You have your life, I have mine, but we are both part of the same thing. We are but the stuff of dreams, matter assembled out of nothing, stacking upon itself to reach some infinite complexity. By what? Divine will? Chance? What's the difference? We are stars, trees, bullets, flowers, oil, salt, granite, dust, ashes, tears, microchips, skyscrapers, riverbanks, molten lead, electricity, fire, water, earth, air, trains of thought, wisps of imagination, broken dreams, 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 dreams. Dream as I may, I cannot imagine anything better than this, good and evil, as it is. Love.
Thank you so much. I think I will inflict some more Neon Buddha poems on you. And I can read from a notebook too. The Neon Buddha is so old, even his brain is wrinkled. The Neon Buddha loves to look at the moon, but it's only a phase. Let's see. Mayan calendar. The Neon Buddha orders death by chocolate. Let's see. The Neon Buddha commits a random act of poetry. Somewhere, the Neon Buddha is being committed to memory. Gallery opening. The Neon Buddha stands perfectly still. Let's see. Only his buttons are off the cuff. Neon Buddha. Let's see. Sorry, I couldn't read these faster here. Gotta choose them. Improvising on being himself, the Neon Buddha. Pulling the trigger on hope, the Neon Buddha. Called, wait, this isn't a Neon Buddha poem, but I'll read it anyway. Called on account of rain, the weatherman. Taking himself a little too seriously, the Neon Buddha. Restaurant conversation. The Neon Buddha is full of it. The world is the Neon Buddha's oyster, but he can't pry it open. Knock, knock, that cow again interrupts the Neon Buddha. A few fries short of a side, Neon Buddha. And one last one. The Neon Buddha decides to name his next book Forthcoming. Our next reader likes artichoke, and that is Herb McLeese, and he's going to read some of his poems for us. Artichoke on his feet.
It's good to see you guys. The first one is very short, and it's simply a little bit of fun. So listen carefully, guys. It's called A Gentleman at the Door. There's a gentleman at the door, sir. Who is he? Death, sir. Did you tell him that I'm not at home? I did, sir, and he agreed. That's why he is waiting. Thank you. Next one is the first poem I wrote in my new place in Shoreline, which is on the western side of a small lake. It's called Lakeside Reflection. Dawn. Two suns, one above, one below, the lower one unquenched in still water. The double light blinds, my wide-brim hat can't ward the second sun's rays, and yet I am transfixed by the otherworldly sight, as if I had seen two suns before. Perhaps a stranger's beauty gasp pins me thus in reverie from another time, another place, maybe even another life. Now that would be television worthy of the name and inspiration too for poetry without words. A wizarding breeze furrows the lake, and with airy passes spells the second sun into a dazzling school of golden fish flecked with green, which in leaping play and with freshening wind dissolves into swarms of burning bees, then diamonds. Noon. His conjuring complete, the wizard presents to the ascendant sun a living work for his fabulous dining board, a cerulean blue and silver brocade. Evening. A coppery sky cools over the royal blue table. The rich brocade is swept away, replaced by the sheerest of veils to which jewels are fixed as stars appear. A spangled veil is spread upon the lake, and a gracious breeze adds a smoothing shake, while evening guests settle on tented shores and tables set for souls and stars to partake. Night. The velvet darkness embraces departing guests, stilled by the splendor of the Milky Way, and holds them while they behold the starry treasure spilled across heavens above and below. Thank you.
Thank you, Herb. Up next, we have the last person on the list. So if there's anyone who hasn't read yet and would like to read, please let us know after this person. Up next, we have Dee Watson, whose favorite pizza topping is $100 bills.
That would be after cooking, just as a garnish. Just, just to clarify. Yeah. So I'd like to share a quatrain with you, followed by a slightly longer poem, but not long enough for you to sleep. So free as a cloud blown by the wind, but never free of the blowing wind. That's my quatrain. What do you do when you're hungry, but you're not hungry for anything? And when your hair is tangled and pulls out in your hand, and your fingernail was bent back, but in your mind you are painting a picture thickly laden with oil paint of massive orange petals, rays of sunlight as you sit on a beach by the desert. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to read still? Okay, well, thank you all for coming. I also want to thank the Soul Food staff because we wouldn't be here without them, so thank you. And I'll close with that joke that you didn't pick at the beginning. This is called, sorry that I can't memorize jokes, and I better read it anyway because I'm terrible at telling jokes, but hopefully I can read this one. This is called The Writer's Choice. A writer died, and due to a bureaucratic snafu in the hereafter, she was allowed to choose her own fate, heaven or hell, for all eternity. Being very shrewd for a dead person, she asked St. Peter for a tour of both. The first stop was hell, where she saw rows and rows of writers sitting chained to desks in a room as hot as 1,000 suns. Fire licked the writers' fingers as they tried to work. Demons whipped their backs with chains. In other words, what she saw was your typical hell scene. "Wow, this is awful," exclaimed the writer. "Now let's see some heaven for comparison." In a moment, they were whisked to heaven for the second half of the tour. There, the writer saw rows and rows of writers, chained to desks in a room as hot as 1,000 suns. Fire licked the writers' fingers as they tried to work. Demons whipped their backs with chains. It looked and smelled just like what she saw in hell, but the stench was worse, and the cries of agony were even more painful than hell. "What gives, St. Pete?" the writer asked incredulously. "This is worse than hell." "Ah, yes," replied St. Peter, "but here in heaven, at least your work gets published." Good night.
up round your shoulders. We could leave all our fear behind. Buddha, 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 Buddha. I went into the liquor store looking for a bottle of my favorite Bombay gin to answer to my problems. But to my delight, the bottles were all taken. Oh yeah, another hero's night. Shaya! Buddha, 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 Buddha. Dark clouds coming, honey, we go to the sea. Dark clouds coming, honey, we go to the sea. Dark clouds coming, honey, we go to the sea. Slip out the back door and leave our cars. Leave everybody inside wondering where we are. Pull you in close, lay you naked down on your back. Pull you in close, lay you naked down on your back. Pull you in close, lay you naked down on your back. Oh, life has been good to me. And turn a little phrase and give you my sympathy. Waited for the rain and the rain it finally came. Waited for the rain and the rain it finally came. It took a sweet time and the rain it finally came and came and came. Oh yes, like compliments to a brand new summer dress. Oh yes. Oh yes. On the train ride to Paris or from sunny Barcelona, we rose up through the mountains as the sun started setting, and the sea came out below us as we rolled through a village. We passed 10 feet from a little porch where a man was serving dinner, and our window was open and we could hear them laughing. I'm never gonna give you up. What do you got if you ain't got love? If you ain't got love, what do you got if you ain't got love? Since then, there's nothing I can't do. I'm never gonna give you up. What do you got if you ain't got love? If you ain't got love, what do you got if you ain't got love? Someday soon, you and I will both be gone. But lately I can't help but think that the love we feel will live on. No relief, no relief from the pain that's in my heart. No relief, there ain't no relief from the love that's tearing us apart.
Why this is a special poem. I wrote this specifically for this place on Midsummer's Eve. And this is pretty close to Midsummer's Eve. It's Midsummer's Day. And so I went and studied Celtic history and mythology for about 1,000 years ago, and the poem is based on that. Come on. That's good. Just hold it so it doesn't flop. The Fairy Queen. In sunshine and firelight, in harvest and healing, in passion and heartache, the Queen's radiance shines. She surges nature's verdant tide and the colt's prancing gait and warms the healing waters drawn from secret springs. She lives in singing dancers, circling her roaring bonfire, and dies with the setting sun streaming across quiet lakes. Upon her fairy smile, lovers leap hand in hand, fiery heights unscathed, to find their own hearts ablaze. At last, her fire to ashes falls, with coals glowing as distant stars, her open heart to immured calls, as birdsong heard through prison bars. Silent man stricken with remembered pain, 'tis by the fairy queen's death that love trumps grief. Then meet her gaze, her awestruck champion, and leaping the sunset glow, your queen reclaim. Thank you.
Thank you. 'Cause I think, you know, 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 I think
that boy, oh Lord. I'm gonna marry that boy. Oh, my mother said to me, girl, you better watch yourself, 'cause a railroad man is an absent man. I'm gonna marry that boy, oh Lord. I'm gonna marry that boy. We'll live in a little town north of Duluth, where my grandmother lived in her youth. And when he comes home at night, he'll call to me, my sweet darling girl, come lay with me. Oh, mother, nothing compares, nothing even comes close to the way he comes up under me. I'm gonna marry that boy, oh Lord. I'm gonna marry that